Hello all, in this video we are going to discuss about Azure File Sync services. So Azure File Sync is a part of Azure Storage Services and we could use to extend the capabilities of Azure Files into our on-premise file server. So rather than creating a direct link to our Azure file share, we could use Azure File Sync to increase the storage capacity of our on-premise file server while locally catching frequently accessed files on premise or on our file servers basically. So if you remember in Azure file share, what we do, we create Azure file share and with the help of URL or API, we access those files. But in Azure File Sync, what we do, we install a Azure Sync agent on an on-premise server, and we use local on-premise server as a cache. So what would help in this cache? Whatever the data we are storing, it will be cache. So basically, local on-premise server act as a cache of Azure file share. And also to access those Azure File Sync, we can use SMB, NFS, and FTP protocols. And to set up this for Windows environment, basically we needed Windows 2012 R2 or later version. It support basically. So there are few components of Azure File Sync agent which we need to keep in mind. So first is storage sync service. It's a top level component basically. So we basically create this component as a root level. So storage sync service is the top level Azure resources for Azure File Sync. The storage sync service resource is a peer of storage account resources and can similarly be deployed to Azure resource group. So if you remember, when we create a storage account, that will be a part of resource group. So in similar way, when we create a sync services, it will be a top root element basically of a resource group basically. And under a single subscription, we can have multiple storage sync services also deployed. So you can have n number of sync services under a one resource group or one subscription. Next, we have sync group. So a sync group defines the sync topology for a set of files. So whatever the endpoints within the sync groups we create, it basically sync with each other. And sync group must contain one cloud endpoint. So cloud endpoint is nothing but it's a file share which we create under the storage account. And server endpoint represent a path on a registered server. So whatever the on-premise or cloud VM basically we are going to register with sync services, those servers act and like basically on those servers, whatever the path we used to share, that will act as a server endpoint. Next component, we have registered servers. So the registered server objects represent a trust relationship between your server and the storage sync services. You can register as many servers to a storage sync service instance you want. However, a server can be registered with only one storage sync service at a time. A single server can basically add as a one time basically on a single sync services. So you cannot add same server in a multiple storage sync services. Next, we have Azure File Sync agents. So this is the very important component. Basically, this is the component who interact with your cloud endpoint. So what we do, this is the basically MSI file which we download on the on-premise environment or cloud VM, and we need to set up this Azure File Sync agent. With the Azure File Sync agent, we use Azure file share. So whatever the data we are going to store in our on-premise server, that will be basically stored in a centralized location on the Azure files. So there are three components of Azure File Sync agent. This is the basically backend components. First is file sync service.exe file. So this is the background Windows services that is responsible for monitoring changes on server endpoints and for initiating sync session to the Azure. So for example, if I have created a file A on server A, so basically this component will sync with the other servers like server V. and whatever the files we have created in server A, that will be moved to the server B with the help of this services. Next, we have storage sync service, the Azure File Syncs file system filter, which is responsible for tearing files to Azure file share, which could when cloud tearing is enabled basically. And another we have PowerShell management console, sorry, commandlets. These are the PowerShell commandlets that you to interact with the Microsoft storage syncs Azure resource provider. You can find these at the following location. So when we install Azure File Sync agent on the particular location, you can find those DLLs of this component. So the whole things we will see in one of with the help of one diagram how basically it works. Now another component we have server endpoint. So server endpoint represent a specific location on a registered server, such as folder on a server volume. So for example, I have a F drive or C drive. Under C drive we have created one folder sync 1, sync 2. So those basically called a server endpoint. And cloud endpoint is nothing, it's just a file share which we create under the storage account. Okay, so basically if you see on this diagram, these are the users. So every company or every organization basically have a particular separate shared location for their users. So what we do with the help of Azure Sync agent, we can basically centralize those file share with the help of Azure Sync agents. So if you see here, we have one storage account. Under this storage account we have a file shares, and those file shares basically shrink with the help of agent, Azure Sync agent. So whatever the users is going to store the data on this server with the help of file share, it will shrink with this server as well. So basically these servers will act as a cache. So let's see in demo. Okay, so I'm in my Azure portal. So there are few components which we needed to create a file sync services. First is storage account. So I'm already having one storage account. So under this storage account, first we need to create a file share. So where is file share? Okay, it's under data storage. So I don't have any file share. I'll just create one file share. Demo file share. Okay, so I have created one demo file share. Next component which we need to create here, sync services. Storage sync services. So I'll create one sync services here. So the source group, I'm having test resource group. Sync service name, we can provide demo sync. And location, I'm choosing East Asia. Next, networking. Here you can select basically access, like if you have some private endpoints, if you want to allow, you can choose that one. I don't have any private endpoints, so I'm going for all networks. Next, tag, you can create a tags here. Next, review and create. So basically review, it's basically validate whatever the configuration you have done is correct or not. If validation is passed, then you can create a resource. So it's validating the deployment. Deployment validation is succeed. Now it's creating the resource. So it takes some time. For time being, I'm pausing the video. Okay, so my sync service has been created. If I'll go to resources, you can see demo sync. So next thing what we need to do, I have already created two Azure virtual machines to set up basically the sync services. So I'll log in the first VM. There are basically on this VM we need to install the Azure Sync agent, which basically interact with the Azure file share. So I'll just connect it. Okay, so I'm in my VM file VM1. So first thing what we need to do here, we need to install the Azure Sync agent. This is the Windows Server 2016. So I'll download the Sync agent for 16. If you have 19, you can download the MSI file for 19. So first thing I'll go and disable the security because it will not allow me to download the file. So I'm just okay, I have offed it. Now what we need to do? Okay, no, not recommended. So I'll search for Azure Sync agent. Okay, next we need to see the downloadable link. Okay, download Azure File Sync agent. So I have for 16 version of OS. So I'll download this MSI file. I'll just run the installer. Okay. Next. So this is the location basically on this VM where sync agent will be installed. So proxy, I'll keep it default. I don't want update. Okay, I'll uncheck this one also. So it's installing the agent on this VM. So meantime, what we will do, we will create a sync group. So I'll go to my sync services, sync group. So I'll name it group 1. Storage account which we have created, because under storage account we have a cloud endpoint, which is nothing, it's just a file share. So we need to choose that. So I have a storage account here. If you remember, we have created a file share, demo file share. So when you select the storage account, it will display the file share whatever you have created. So I'm choosing demo file share, create. You see cloud endpoint is creation is in progress. So basically whatever the file share we created, it's called a cloud endpoint. So it takes some time, maybe 30 seconds or 40 seconds. Okay, so it's in progress. For time being, I'm pausing the, okay, it's completed. So we'll go to this resource group, sorry, sync group. If you see, we have one cloud endpoint, demo file share. Now we need to add the server endpoint. So we have installed the agent on this VM. So now we need to configure it. Okay. So I'll sign into my Azure account here. So Gmail. You can't sign into here with a personal account. Use a work or school account. Okay, just give me a moment. I'll just check it. Okay, so basically it was not allowing me to use a personal account. So what I have done, I have created a one user test here. So now the domain name has changed. Like it's my uh, default directory basically, and I've created one test user. So I have logged in from this user account now. So if I'll go to, so I'm logged in from this account. So here if you choose a free trial subscription, free trial, there is no resource group in the selected subscription. Select a different subscription or use the Azure portal to create one. Okay, so let me check this one. Just give me a moment. Okay, so that issue was coming because I have created a new user and but I have not added that user in the resource group. So what I have done under my resource group, which is test. So I have if you go to access control, I have added the user here under this resource group. So if I'll go back to my resource group, I can see a test resource group, and under test resource group we have a storage sync service demo sync. So I'll just go and click on register. When you use a personal account, you will see a lot of issues in terms of accessing the resources. So you need to troubleshoot. I would suggest when you create Azure portal account, just create a one test user and assign the owner permission and do whatever you want to do. So now validation is passed. I'll just close it. So if I'll go back to my uh, sync services, and if you remember, we created sync groups. So under sync groups, we are about to get server endpoints. So here it's zero server endpoint. Just we'll wait for few more minutes. It takes some time. So we'll wait for 30 to 40 seconds. Okay. So now we'll go to the add server endpoint, and here you can see the registered server. So this is the file VM1 which we have registered. So the name will display here file VM1. And in this VM basically we need to specify a path where we are going to create a file share. So I'll go to C drive. I'll create a folder called data. So this path basically I'll specify here. You have been trying to create a server endpoint on the server system volume. Please note that you will not be able to enable cloud tiering on the system volume. So we are using system volume, so we cannot enable cloud tiering. So that's fine. Let's create. So similar steps we need to follow on file VM2. So it takes some time. Okay, so now you can see server endpoints, we have file VM1. So in similar way we need to add endpoint for file VM2. So I'll go to my file VM2 virtual machine. Okay, RDP file. So here also what we have to do, first we need to download the Azure Sync agent. Before downloading we need to disable the IE security, so it will allow us to download the file. Okay. So okay, first we need to disable the security. So we'll go to server manager, local server, and here is the INN security configuration. So we'll make it off. Now here we download Azure File Sync agent. Okay, so we need to open it again because okay, Azure File Sync agent. Okay, this is coming because language I need to change. Okay, anyways, we'll download the file. So this is the again Windows Server 2016. So I'll download the MSI for 16. Done. So I'm keeping everything default. Install. So the same steps basically we are following on file VM2, because to verify the synchronization we need a two virtual machines. So at least we can see, okay, whatever the content we are creating on a file VM1, it is reflecting to the file VM2 or not. So that's why I'm creating the same step for another VM. Okay, so installation is completed. Now we need to configure the agent. Okay, so I'll just sign into my Azure account. So I'll not use my personal account again here because it's not allowing me to log in. It's basically asking for personal account, sorry, work account or domain account. So again I'll use my user which I have created. So this is the user basically I have created. So I'll use this. Password. Okay, so I don't want to protect now. I'll choosing for skip. So subscription, free trial, resource group test, and synchronization. We have demo sync, and we'll register it. Okay, so registration is successful. We'll close it, and we'll go to the back to the Azure portal here. So I'll go to my sync services, which is demo sync, and I'll go to register servers. So here you can see we have both the servers, file VM1 and file VM2. If I'll go to Shing group, so it's take some time. Status is pending. If I'll so it takes some time for resting the servers basically. So we'll wait, and I'll add another server endpoint here, which is file VM2, and the path I'll create C drive data. Create. Okay, so this file VM2 is also added a server endpoint. So now what we do? I'll go to my file VM1, and if you remember, we have created a server endpoint is C drive data. So I'll create one file here. test1.txt. So the same file should be auto shrink on the file vm2. So if you see C drive data, it's not shrink yet. We'll wait for 10 seconds. So I'll just refresh it again. Now see, test1 is here. Now important thing, the same file, basically whatever we are creating here, it is storing as a central location on Azure File Share. So if I'll go to my storage account, file share, demo file share which we have created. So test1.txt file is storing here. So basically, and one more thing, if we are going to upload any file from here, from demo file share, so that will not update on the server, because that's not how the Azure File Sync work. So it basically takes the data from your servers and store in the Azure File Share. For example, if I'll create one file, upload one file here, for example, okay, it's taking some time. So if I'll upload any file from here, that will not reflect on this file vm1 and vm2. Okay, so if I'll update any file from here, for example, I'm updating one image here, upload. So the image is uploaded on the Azure File Share, but it will not reflect on this location, because this is not the way Azure File Sync work. If I'll refresh it again, it will not reflect. And if I'll remove the content from here, like test file, if I'll remove this location, if I'll refresh it, let me refresh it again. See, it's gone. So it's basically gone from both the servers, file vm2 and file vm1. So that's how Azure File Sync work. Basically, whatever the agent we have installed, sync agent, so basically it synchronizes your data across the servers through the Azure File Share. So I think that's all for this video. See you in the next video. Thank you all.